In the heart of Kansas City, Missouri, the sun rose on a quiet neighborhood, casting its early light on a small two-story house nestled among similar modest dwellings. Inside, the Cox family was beginning another day, oblivious to the tragedy that would soon envelop them. Fawn Cox, just 16, had spent the previous day working her part-time job at the local amusement park, a place filled with laughter and screams of excitement. She was a familiar face there, known for her cheerful disposition and helpful nature. Her job was not just a pastime. It was a necessity, a contribution to her family's modest income. That evening, like many others, she returned home tired but fulfilled, ready for a night of rest. Her room on the second floor was her sanctuary, a place of solace and dreams. That night, however, it would transform into a silent witness to an unspeakable act. As Fawn slipped into bed, the rest of her family settled on the first floor, seeking relief from the sweltering summer heat under the hum of an old, loud air conditioner. The morning light brought a deafening silence. Fawn's younger sister, accustomed to her prompt mornings, noticed the unusual stillness emanating from upstairs. Concerned, she ventured into Fawn's room, only to be met with a scene that would haunt her for decades. There on the bed lay Fawn, lifeless and still, a victim of a heinous act that occurred right under their roof. The house, once filled with the sounds of a close-knit family, was now enveloped in a shroud of grief and disbelief. The police were called, and as they stepped into the room, it was evident that this was no natural demise. Fawn Cox, a young girl with a lifetime of possibilities ahead of her, had been cruelly and inexplicably taken from this world. The neighborhood, once a cocoon of suburban normalcy, was now the backdrop for a mystery that would puzzle and torment many for years to come. The Cox family, engulfed in their loss, could not fathom the journey of anguish and revelation that lay ahead. The question of who could commit such a brutal act in their home, and why, began to echo in the minds of all who heard about the tragic fate of young Fawn Cox. In the heart of a modest Kansas City neighborhood, the Cox family home stood as a testament to simple, unassuming lives. The household buzzed with the typical sounds of family life, where parents and siblings intertwined their daily routines in loving chaos. Fawn Cox, the second of 3 daughters, was a beacon of light in this familial tapestry. From a young age, Fawn displayed a maturity beyond her years. She balanced her life with grace, juggling the responsibilities of a teenager with the role of a surrogate mother to her younger sisters. The Cox household, though not affluent, was rich in love and care, and Fawn was a cornerstone of this warmth. As Fawn blossomed into a young woman, her sense of responsibility deepened. She found solace in the teachings of her church and discovered a passion for swimming, a sport that offered her moments of tranquility amidst the whirlpool of her daily life. Fawn's commitment to her family and community was unwavering. The summer of 1989 was a defining period for Fawn. At 16, she took a job at a local amusement park, a place that contrasted starkly with her quiet, disciplined life. The park, with its cacophony of sounds and array of characters, was a world away from the serene lanes of her swimming pool or the hushed pews of her church. Yet, Fawn navigated this new world with the same dedication and kindness that she showed at home. Working at the park was not just a teenage adventure for Fawn. It was a necessity. Her family, grappling with financial constraints, needed the additional income. Fawn, ever the selfless daughter, stepped up without hesitation. She spent most of her summer behind counters, serving customers, her smile unwavering even in the scorching heat. But Fawn's job was more than a financial aid. It was a rite of passage. It brought new experiences, new friendships, and a newfound sense of independence. She was no longer just the responsible older sister or the dutiful daughter. She was a young woman carving out her own space in the world. Yet, amidst this blossoming life, a shadow lurked. The evening of July 26, 1989, marked the end of an ordinary workday for Fawn, but it unknowingly became the final chapter of her life. After finishing her shift, she was picked up by her mother and younger sister, unaware that the ride home would be her last journey. That night, as Fawn retired to her room, the rest of the family, unaware of the impending tragedy, settled into their routines. The household, alive with the day's end, slowly succumbed to the night's embrace. And as the lights dimmed and the family drifted to sleep, an ominous veil descended upon the Cox home, a prelude to a morning that would forever alter the fabric of their lives. The morning of July 27, 1989, dawned like any other in the Cox household, but it was destined to be etched in memory as a day of unfathomable tragedy. The early hours unraveled in their usual rhythm, with the hum of the old air conditioner providing a steady backdrop. But as the family stirred, an eerie silence loomed over Fawn's room. Fawn, the diligent teenager, was known for her punctuality, a trait that was as much a part of her routine as her morning alarm. Yet, on this fateful morning, the alarm's persistent ringing met with no response. It was a deviation from the norm that prompted a sense of unease in her younger sister, who made her way upstairs, expecting to find Fawn in her usual deep slumber. The reality that greeted her was far more harrowing. Fawn lay motionless on her bed, her stillness a stark contrast to the vitality she embodied. Panic and confusion swirled through the room as her mother joined, their cries of despair shattering the morning calm. Fawn, the vibrant soul of their family, was inexplicably lifeless. The room, a place of rest and dreams, had transformed into a crime scene. The marks on Fawn's neck were telltale signs of a brutal strangulation, a violent end to a life so full of promise. The family's sanctuary had been violated, its sanctity irreparably shattered. As the reality of the situation sank in, the family's grief was compounded by confusion and fear. How could such a horrific act occur under their roof, within the walls that were meant to protect them? The police arrived, their presence a solemn confirmation of the nightmare that had unfolded. The investigation commenced immediately, with detectives canvassing the scene for clues. Fawn's room, once a haven of teenage privacy, was now scrutinized for evidence. The law enforcement officers moved with urgency, but a palpable sense of helplessness hung in the air. The perpetrator had vanished, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and unanswered questions. For the Cox family, the day marked the beginning of a relentless quest for answers. The house, once filled with the sounds of laughter and life, now echoed with the haunting memory of loss. As the police cordoned off the room, sealing it as a testament to a crime so heinous, the family grappled with a reality they could never have imagined. In the community, news of the tragedy spread rapidly, casting a shadow of fear and disbelief. Fawn Cox, a name synonymous with kindness and diligence, had become a victim of an unspeakable crime. Neighbors, friends, and acquaintances struggled to comprehend how such evil had descended upon one of their own. As the investigation unfolded, the family clung to each other, their bonds of love and shared grief a small comfort in the face of overwhelming despair. The question of who could have perpetrated such a crime, and why, lingered heavily, a dark cloud over their once peaceful existence. And as the day waned, the Cox household, enveloped in sorrow and shock, faced the daunting task of living in a world forever altered by the loss of their beloved Fawn. In the days following the tragic discovery, the Cox family home, once a bastion of warmth and security, stood as a silent witness to the atrocity that had unfolded within its walls. As investigators combed through the evidence, the reality of Fawn's untimely death became an unrelenting torment for those she left behind. The Kansas City Police Department, faced with the daunting task of solving the murder, embarked on a meticulous investigation. The fact that Fawn had been killed in her own bedroom, a small space in a modestly sized house, perplexed the detectives. The absence of any disturbance heard by the family members, despite the thin walls and close quarters, deepened the mystery. The lack of witnesses was puzzling. The family, sleeping just a floor below, had not heard a sound, a detail that initially baffled the investigators. However, an explanation emerged with the old loud air conditioner on the first floor. Its droning noise had masked any sounds of the struggle, rendering the family unknowing witnesses to the crime. The only anomaly noted that night was the behavior of the family's poodle. The dog, usually calm, had been restless and barking. This unusual behavior was overlooked at the time, dismissed as a reaction to the dog's pregnancy. In hindsight, it seemed like a missed warning, a potential alert to the presence of an intruder. As the investigation progressed, the detectives focused on the physical evidence. In Fawn's room, they found telltale signs of a struggle: short strands of hair, small bloodstains on the bedsheet. These findings were meticulously collected, offering a glimmer of hope in the quest for justice. The police theory began to take shape. The assailant or assailants had likely entered the house through the second-floor window, an entry point that overlooked the backyard. This theory was supported by the discovery of an old trailer parked nearby, which could have been used to gain access to the window ledge. The open window itself, left ajar to combat the summer heat, appeared to be the silent accomplice in the crime. In the wake of the murder, several items were reported missing from the house, hinting at a burglary. A Nintendo console, a stereo, and other valuables had vanished, deepening the mystery. Some items were later found discarded on the ground outside, as if the burglar had thrown them from the window during the escape. The investigators were faced with a complex puzzle: a young girl murdered in her own room, a family unknowingly sleeping through the crime, and a mix of evidence that pointed to both a burglary and a deliberate violent act. The silent walls of the Cox home held the secrets of that night, secrets that would take years to unravel. As days turned into weeks, the Cox family grappled with their loss, the house a constant reminder of the void left by Fawn. The investigation continued, but answers remained elusive, and the question of who had climbed through that window and why haunted both the family and the detectives. As the investigation into Fawn Cox's murder progressed, the Kansas City Police Department faced a daunting challenge. The evidence collected from the crime scene, a mixture of hair, blood, and seminal traces, held the potential to unlock the mystery, but the technological limitations of the era posed significant hurdles. In the late 1980s, DNA analysis was in its nascent stages. The science that today is a cornerstone of criminal investigations was then a fledgling field, its potential not fully realized. The investigators were aware that the evidence held the key to solving the case, but the ability to unlock its secrets was frustratingly out of reach. The initial suspicion fell on a trio of teenagers, one of whom was a classmate of Fawn. Their arrest brought a temporary sense of progress, but the case soon hit a wall. The DNA evidence collected from the scene did not conclusively match any of the suspects. The limitations of the technology at the time meant that the results were inconclusive, neither definitively implicating nor exonerating the suspects. The case was further complicated by conflicting testimonies and the retraction of key witness statements. A crucial lead, which had initially seemed promising, evaporated as quickly as it had appeared. The suspects were released due to insufficient evidence, and the investigation found itself at a standstill. Months turned into years, and the Cox family's hope for justice began to wane. The lack of advancement in the case was a constant source of heartache. Fawn's room, preserved as she had left it, became a shrine to a life cut tragically short and a daily reminder of the unanswered questions. The police, despite their efforts, were hindered by the limitations of the time. The absence of a centralized DNA database meant that the crucial evidence collected from Fawn's room could not be cross-referenced against other potential suspects. The trail grew cold, and the case gradually receded into the background, one of many unsolved mysteries that haunt the annals of law enforcement. However, the case was not forgotten. Fawn's family, determined to keep her memory alive, continued to press for answers. They held on to the hope that advancements in technology would one day provide the breakthrough needed to solve the mystery of Fawn's death. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the field of forensic science advanced by leaps and bounds. The establishment of national DNA databases and significant improvements in DNA analysis techniques rekindled hope in cold cases like Fawn's. Yet for the Cox family, Each passing year without answers was a painful reminder of the justice that remained elusive. The case of Fawn Cox, once a headline story in Kansas City, had faded from public view, but for those who loved her, the quest for closure never ceased. The silent witness of her bedroom, frozen in time, awaited the day when the truth would finally be revealed. As the new millennium dawned, the case of Fawn Cox, which had languished in the shadows of unresolved mysteries, experienced a flicker of renewed hope. Advancements in DNA technology had transformed the landscape of forensic science, and with these advancements came the potential to breathe new life into cold cases. The Kansas City Police Department, spurred by these developments and the persistent appeals of the Cox family, revisited Fawn's case. The once inconclusive DNA samples collected from the crime scene were re-examined, this time with more sophisticated techniques. The hope was that the leaps in forensic science would finally yield the answers that had eluded investigators for over a decade. The crucial development in this renewed investigation was the integration of Fawn's DNA evidence into the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, a national database that holds DNA profiles from convicted offenders and other unsolved cases. This move represented a significant step forward, offering the possibility of matching the evidence from Fawn's room with known offenders. Despite these efforts, the breakthrough the Cox family and investigators hoped for remained elusive. The DNA samples from Fawn's room did not find a match in the CODIS database, leaving the case shrouded in uncertainty. The disappointment was palpable, but the Cox family refused to give up hope, clinging to the belief that science would eventually unveil the perpetrator. The investigation, reinvigorated by technological advancements, continued with a renewed sense of purpose. The detectives revisited old leads and re-interviewed witnesses, hoping that time might have loosened the tongues of those who had remained silent. They explored new angles, considering the possibility that the perpetrator might not have been in the criminal system at the time of the initial DNA analysis. Throughout this period, the Cox family remained a pillar of strength and resilience. The pain of Fawn's absence never waned, but their determination to seek justice never faltered. They became advocates for the use of advanced DNA testing in solving cold cases, hoping that their plight might help others facing similar agonies. The community, too, rallied around the family, reigniting interest in the case through local media and community events. The story of Fawn Cox, once at risk of being forgotten, was now back in the public consciousness, a symbol of the fight against the silence of unresolved tragedies. As the years passed, the Cox family watched as other cold cases were solved using the very techniques they hoped would bring them closure. Each solved case was a testament to the power of persistence and scientific advancement, and a reminder that the key to unlocking the mystery of Fawn's death might still be within reach. The journey for justice, filled with setbacks and disappointments, continued to be a test of endurance and faith for the Cox family. The hope for closure, dimmed but never extinguished, was a beacon that guided their path forward. The year 2018 marked a pivotal turn in the long, winding road of Fawn Cox's unsolved case. Nearly 3 decades had passed since that fateful summer night, and the once fresh trails had faded into distant, painful memories. Yet the quest for truth never waned, especially for the Cox family and the dedicated detectives. In an unexpected twist, the case found its way into the digital age's spotlight. Amber, Fawn's younger sister, took to a popular American online forum dedicated to unsolved crimes. This platform had gained a reputation for shedding light on cold cases, often bringing together amateur sleuths, experts, and sometimes even witnesses or those with crucial information. Amber's decision to share her story and insights was not made lightly. With verified authenticity, she offered a unique perspective, filling in gaps and adding depth to the existing narrative. Her intimate knowledge of the family, the house, and the events surrounding that night provided a new lens through which to view the case. She proposed a chilling theory that the perpetrators had known the family and had meticulously planned the crime. According to Amber, The timing of the murder coincided with the rare absence of certain family members from the house, suggesting premeditation. This theory was a stark contrast to the initial belief that the crime was a spontaneous act during a burglary. Amber also revealed that at least two of the perpetrators were familiar with Fawn, one being a schoolmate and the other an acquaintance from church. These insights painted a harrowing picture of betrayal and malice, suggesting that Fawn may have been targeted by someone within her own community. The revelation that Fawn's murder could have been a premeditated act committed by known individuals was a seismic shift in the narrative. It suggested a level of calculation and familiarity that went far beyond the original theory of an opportunistic crime. The police, taking note of Amber's statements, revisited the case with this new angle in mind. They considered the possibility that the crime was not just a byproduct of a burglary, but a deliberate act of violence with Fawn as the intended target. This perspective opened new avenues of investigation, though the passage of time posed significant challenges. Amber's courage in sharing her story reignited public interest in the case. The online community rallied in support, offering theories, condolences, and encouragement. The family's unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth, coupled with the power of modern communication, breathed new life into the investigation. However, despite the renewed attention and efforts, the case remained a complex puzzle. The lack of concrete evidence linking the newly suggested suspects to the crime meant that the revelations, while compelling, did not immediately lead to a resolution. The family, buoyed by the support and the renewed interest in Fawn's case, continued to push for answers. They hoped that the combination of modern technology, fresh perspectives, and relentless pursuit of justice would eventually lead to the closure they had sought for so long. As the story of Fawn Cox continued to unfold in the public domain, the mystery of her tragic demise remained, a poignant reminder of the enduring quest for truth and justice in the face of unimaginable loss. As the years rolled into the 21st century, the case of Fawn Cox, steeped in mystery and heartache, lingered in the background, a cold case in the archives of the Kansas City Police Department. The Cox family, while struggling with the unresolved nature of Fawn's death, held on to a thread of hope. This hope was anchored in the belief that advances in forensic science, particularly DNA technology, would eventually provide the key to unlocking the truth. In the early 2000s, there was a significant breakthrough. Forensic science had evolved dramatically since Fawn's untimely death, with DNA analysis becoming a powerful tool in criminal investigations. The introduction of sophisticated techniques allowed for more precise and definitive analysis of genetic material. The Kansas City Police Department, spurred by these advancements and the persistent urging of the Cox family, decided to revisit the DNA evidence gathered from Fawn's room. The samples, which had yielded inconclusive results in the past, were now subject to cutting-edge analysis. The investigators focused on the DNA sample found at the crime scene, a crucial piece of evidence that had the potential to identify the perpetrator. This time, the analysis was more advanced, capable of extracting detailed genetic profiles, even from degraded or partial samples. The re-examination of the DNA evidence, however, did not immediately lead to a breakthrough. The forensic experts were unable to match the DNA from the crime scene with any profiles in the national criminal databases. This setback was a disheartening blow to the investigation and the Cox family, who had pinned their hopes on the advancements in DNA technology. Despite this setback, the police remained committed to the case, recognizing the potential for future technological advancements to provide new opportunities for solving it. The Cox family, too, remained engaged, regularly checking in with the detectives for updates and advocating for the continued use of advanced forensic methods. The DNA samples were securely stored, waiting for the day when they could finally reveal the perpetrator's identity. The Cox family understood that the path to justice was a marathon, not a sprint, and they braced themselves for the long haul, fueled by the love for Fawn and the unyielding desire for closure. As the case continued to garner attention, both locally and online, the narrative of Fawn's life and untimely death resonated with many. The community, reminded of the tragedy through media coverage and online discussions, rallied around the family, offering support and keeping the memory of Fawn alive. The persistence of the Cox family, the dedication of the investigators, and the advances in forensic science were a testament to the evolving nature of criminal investigations. The journey to solve Fawn's murder was far from over, but each step forward, no matter how small, was a step closer to the truth. In the quest for justice, the passage of time often brings both challenges and opportunities. For the Cox family and the Kansas City Police Department, the hope was that time, coupled with relentless pursuit and scientific progress, would eventually shine a light on the dark mystery that had clouded their lives for so long. By 2018, the case of Fawn Cox had meandered through nearly 3 decades of dead ends and disappointments. However, a surprising development emerged, showcasing the power of the digital age in solving cold cases. The key to reigniting interest in Fawn's story came from an unexpected source: her younger sister, Amber, and her decision to share her insights on an online forum dedicated to unsolved crimes. Amber's post on the forum was a calculated attempt to breathe new life into her sister's case. She provided personal insights and previously undisclosed details, adding new layers to the narrative. Her perspective suggested that the crime was not a random act of violence, but a premeditated murder, possibly carried out by individuals within Fawn's own social circle. This revelation transformed the landscape of the investigation. Amber's account proposed that the perpetrators knew the family's routines and had carefully chosen the night of the crime, a time when the house was most vulnerable. Her mention of at least 2 individuals familiar to Fawn, a schoolmate and a church acquaintance, pointed to a chilling possibility of betrayal. The online community's response to Amber's post was immediate and impactful. Her story resonated with netizens, who began piecing together theories and discussing the case with renewed vigor. This digital brainstorming session brought forth a plethora of ideas, some far-fetched, but others plausible enough to merit consideration by law enforcement. The Kansas City Police Department, taking note of the online discourse, revisited the case with fresh eyes. They re-examined old evidence in light of the new theories and re-interviewed witnesses, searching for overlooked connections or inconsistencies in their initial investigation. The forum post also reignited public interest in the case. Local media picked up on the story, leading to renewed coverage and public appeals for information. This resurgence of attention brought the case back into the public consciousness, a vital step in garnering new leads or insights. As the detectives delved deeper, they were reminded of the complexities of human relationships and the often hidden motives that drive individuals to commit heinous acts. The possibility that Fawn's killer was someone she knew and trusted added a layer of complexity to the case, challenging the investigators to look beyond the evidence and into the psyche of potential suspects. The digital age, with its vast connectivity and access to information, had opened new doors in the investigation. The online community's involvement demonstrated the evolving nature of crime solving, where public engagement and digital platforms could play a pivotal role in uncovering the truth. For the Cox family, the renewed interest in Fawn's case was a double-edged sword. While it brought hope that justice might finally be served, it also reopened old wounds and brought forth a torrent of emotions. Nevertheless, they remained steadfast in their quest for answers, buoyed by the support of a global community united in their desire for justice. As the investigation entered this new phase, driven by digital collaboration and public interest, the pieces of the puzzle began to align, inching closer to the elusive truth that had remained hidden for decades. The year 2020 marked a turning point in the decades-long quest to solve the murder of Fawn Cox. The persistent efforts of the Cox family, combined with the advances in forensic science and the renewed public interest, led to a breakthrough that would bring a bitter closure to the case. The Kansas City Police Department, bolstered by the support of the FBI, decided to reanalyze the DNA evidence using the latest forensic techniques. This time, the focus was on the DNA sample found at the crime scene. The advanced analysis yielded a result that was both shocking and heartrending. The DNA belonged to Donald Fox, Fawn's cousin. This revelation sent shockwaves through the Cox family and the community. Donald, who was 21 years old at the time of Fawn's murder, had never been considered a suspect. He was part of the family, a regular presence in Fawn's life, making the truth all the more painful to comprehend. The family grappled with the unsettling reality that the person responsible for Fawn's death had been among them all along. Donald Fox had lived a troubled life, marred by minor criminal offenses and substance abuse. His untimely death in 2006, due to a drug overdose, meant that he had evaded justice for 17 years, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The revelation of his involvement in Fawn's murder brought a sense of closure, but it was a closure tainted with grief and disbelief. The discovery raised new questions about the involvement of the initial suspects. It appeared that Donald may have had accomplices, but without his testimony, the full extent of the crime remained shrouded in mystery. The Cox family, while relieved to finally know the identity of Fawn's killer, were left to ponder the complex web of relationships that had concealed the truth for so long. The resolution of the case highlighted the incredible strides made in forensic science, demonstrating how advancements in DNA analysis could breathe new life into cold cases. It also underscored the importance of persistence, both by law enforcement and the families of victims, in seeking justice. For the Cox family, the journey had been long and arduous. The pain of losing Fawn had been compounded by years of uncertainty and frustration. The revelation of Donald's involvement provided answers, but it also opened old wounds and brought forth a complex mix of emotions: relief, sorrow, and a sense of betrayal. The case of Fawn Cox, now resolved, left a lasting impact on the Kansas City community and beyond. It served as a reminder of the enduring power of hope and the relentless pursuit of justice, no matter how long it takes. The journey to solve Fawn's murder had been a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. As the Cox family processed the revelations, they chose to focus on preserving Fawn's memory, not as a victim of a heinous crime, but as a beloved daughter, sister, and friend whose life, though tragically cut short, continued to inspire and touch the hearts of many. In the end, the story of Fawn Cox was one of love, loss, and the unyielding quest for truth. It was a story that, through its resolution, offered a sense of closure and a reminder that in the darkest of mysteries, light can eventually shine through.